Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. What's up?
What's going on?
How's everybody doing today? Oh God. Lord.
Uh-oh.
Oh Lord. What aired yesterday? Did you do the show or did we have to slip to the network yesterday?
I stepped in to put out the fire.
I appreciate that.
3 hours
Appreciate
straight by
that.
myself. Yeah, it's
Appreciate that.
Fun day.
Sorry I put you in that position.
It's okay. I get it.
Holy cow. Any doctors listening, I'd love to hear from you today because, I don't know what's going on. But yesterday, I just, I had what felt like, gas, indigestion. Didn't feel great, but whatever. Just, I was tired. I didn't sleep much the night before. And my stomach was in knots, but I just felt like I had indigestion, whatever. Mm-hmm. And, days just going by and me, I like to work. So I don't want to call in or anything like that, especially if I have gas, I have gas. I can't do a show today. So
I would make fun of you. Yes. If that was
yeah. So I don't know, I showed up at the studio sometime in the 2 p.m. hour and I parked my car in the garage. And I got out of the car, and I'm not kidding you, I almost fainted. And I went, uh-oh. I'm like, this isn't good. So I came upstairs and then saw you and gave you a weird look, I think, and was like, I don't know what's going on here.
Yes. Which made me...
And then...
I didn't ask because you were clearly in some kind of... I'll call it gastrointestinal distress is what I would call it.
Full-on distress.
I was about to be like, why did you even come up here?
Yeah. So then I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I did, and then proceeded. I won't tell you what happened in there, but it wasn't pretty for 10, 15 minutes. And that ramped up fast. And then I'm like, I think I'm going to go home now.
Right.
So I did. So sorry about all that. I apologize. I came home. I drove home, which I don't know why I did that because I was a wreck. And then, I don't know, I got in bed. I don't know. I live close to the station, so I was home by 3:10, something like that. Got in bed. Didn't wake up till 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Woke up. Was kind of didn't know what was going on. Couldn't really get out of bed.
Oh, boy.
My wife was like, you have to eat. What did you eat today? I'm like, nothing. She's like, you got to eat something.
Yeah,
I had a piece of toast. Yeah, I had a piece of toast. Passed out again. Woke up today around 11.
Okay.
So I don't know what's up. And the other things that are going on that are a little weird, I got some tingles in a hand. My back hurts.
Why haven't you seen a doctor yet? What are you doing
know.
over there?
I don't know. I feel like I have a kidney stone, but and any doctors out there that are listening to this that want to go, all right, here's what I think it is. I'll take the free advice because I don't really like going to them. I don't like talking to them. I don't like having procedures done or medications or anything. I don't like that stuff. So I've avoided it so far.
You realize you're above age 50, right? This is the time you should be going to the doctor. You are not my age. I feel firmly fine roasting you for this. You should.
I go to the doctor. I have checkups and I talk to them.
I look, man. I know where that I know where the Minute Clinic is right there. It's not that far from you. Could have gone in there and gone to a doctor real quick. I'm just saying. It ain't hard, man.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like it'll go away. Whatever it is, it'll be fine. So today,
you got kids, bro. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I'm not I don't feel like it's in that kind of that's the thing. If I was certain it was a kidney stone, because I know people have had them, they talk about this debilitating pain that they get. Well, I didn't get that. I had a lot of discomfort and I didn't feel well. And I haven't felt well, but I didn't get that. The doubled over, can't stand up, oh my God, pain. I didn't have anything like that. I don't think I'm having a heart attack. I don't think that that's happening. And I could just be really tired. Then your mind gets away from you and you're like, was I poisoned? I can't, I just don't even, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. So this happened fast and I don't know. It kind of feels very out of the blue. So I don't know.
So no cause for concern. No urgency because it came
Well,
out
I'm
of
here
nowhere.
now. I'm here now.
Okay,
So,
all
I have a feeling these 2 hours are going to be very long, but I'm here now. So we'll see what happens after this. And if I feel the same tomorrow morning, I promise I'll go to the doctor.
When you pass out on the other side, it's should I call 911? Call in, into the station. Yes or no? Yeah, that's what it's going to turn into.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much what it will turn into.
Yeah.
All right. Let me get on to something else. I haven't had a chance to weigh in on this because I wasn't here yesterday, but the death of Bill Walton, I think, is worth discussing.
Sure.
Today. And mainly because like my crossover with him was very limited. I probably interviewed him a few times on SportsCenter or something like that. And I never worked with him. I never did games with him or anything like that. So I didn't really know him. But I knew of him. And, what you saw on TV is, from what I could tell from everybody who knew him, and considering the stories you're hearing, the last 48 hours past his death, is he was one of the more, like, what you saw on TV is exactly the guy that he was. And like, for me, I think he was probably one of the most authentic people that I've ever seen on, like it or not, on TV, probably one of the most authentic people I've ever seen on television. I'm acting like I'm old enough because I'm in my 50s, but I don't remember him playing. So, I was really, really young when he was playing, and I can only go off of what people said and the statistics of him as a player. And, he is in the Hall of Fame for a reason. And he had one game in the NCAA championship that is going to go unmatched. Again, he 21 to 22 in an NCAA championship game. It's going to go unmatched. So him as a player, for me to comment on him, I think would be a little much because I don't really remember seeing him playing. I can just go off of what people have said. And I don't believe Portland's won a championship since he was there. So obviously, he was a great, great player in the NBA. But for me, he is a broadcaster, and maybe in sports, I don't know if there's anybody more unusual than him. And it was certainly really authentic, but it was really odd, and it was really unusual, and it was different, and it was, I don't know, it can't miss is the way I would put it. But sometimes I would find myself up at those 10 o'clock tips from the Pac-12 and see him up there, and you just kind of stick with it, because you just don't know what you're going to get with him, and it could be anything. And it's, the other part about this too that I think it was hard was I don't think many people knew he was sick, which is always the hardest when that stuff comes out later. It's like he died of cancer. Well, nobody knew he had cancer. So he was one of those people that kind of kept it to himself and, didn't want to, I guess, burden people with the news of his illnesses. And for me, I walked away from that being like, I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone more authentic than him on TV. It was very unusual for sports to be that level of authentic and to kind of lean into things that aren't really sports related. And but it worked for him, and it worked for his personality. And every time I see these clips of Dave Pasch with him or others with him, I'm like, man, I wish I had one game with that guy. I think that would have been a lot of fun to work with him.
Yeah, I think the best way I could describe it was similar to you. If you were surfing around and the Wizards and the Caps weren't on, or there wasn't something on the NBA TNT crew, and you saw he was doing a game, you had to watch. There was nothing. You had to watch. There was nothing else better on when he was on a game, because you literally did not know what he was about to talk about, what he was about to go on a tangent about. We started to get this when, accounts like Awful Announcing or other Twitter accounts, they knew when he was on a game, and you were all of a sudden, here's Bill Walton going off on the Grateful Dead or some other tangent because you just didn't know what he was going to say, and he was must-watch TV. And more so than all of that, he seemed like, and pretty much what everyone is saying over the last 2 or 3 days, one of the most genuinely nice human beings in our business. And you know how that goes over well when somebody is authentic and is nice like that. And there's not much more you could ask for, that when you pass away, everyone has a story about you, about how nice you were, but also some other story that just had you gravitate towards them. And that's who Walton was.
Yeah. I mean, like the stories you hear, like they're like, tell me about his teepee.
Yeah.
Or tell me about that camping adventure you had with him. Or tell me about that Dead show you went to with him.
Yep.
Or then you'll see one from Mike Breen who tells a story about how he made the end of his father's life so memorable. It's all he talked about until he passed away because he set up this thing for him to have this incredible moment in San Diego. Like it really, I just, it's sad. It's sad that he passed away. I spent the first 5 minutes of the show asking people, please help me. I'm dying over here. And he had cancer, didn't let it get public.
Right.
Like it never got public. So that's his choice. And I think everybody feels differently about those type of things. But to be someone who probably was on TV as of 3 months ago, right? Like for the NCAA, I'm sure he probably called some Pac-12 games,
Yep.
By the end, you would have never known.
Right.
Like there wasn't even like, oh, what's wrong with Billy? Doesn't look right.
Right, exactly.
It's amazing. It really is. And he really was maybe the most unusual broadcaster in sports that I can remember. I can't think of anybody else who did it more uniquely different than him. And, it's funny, like in some cases, like when people try to do this, it doesn't really work. Like oftentimes, especially like in sports where people are like, dude, I came here to watch the game. Like I didn't come here to watch you talk about taking mushrooms in 78. But for him, it worked, and like it really worked. I think Charles Barkley is kind of this ilk a little bit where he kind of lives by his own rules and he's able to do it in his own way. Now, obviously very differently than the way Bill Walton did it, but he's able to do it in his own way that's extremely authentic. And Walton was able to do that. It's really amazing that he was kind of heralded for doing it this way. I mean, he turned a lot of Pac-12 games into, tales of, trips he went on.
Right.
Like, it's very strange. Like it's a really, really odd that it like worked out for him that people weren't after a while going, get this crazy tall hippie guy off the TV. I'm trying to watch the Ducks play the Bruins, but they didn't. And I saw a lot of people write, that it was fitting that it literally the day after the Pac-12 ended, for all intents and purposes, the last championship was played the night before. I think baseball it was the last championship that the conference is ever going to give out was the day after he died. And he is Mr. Pac-12. He was part of the greatest dynasty in college basketball history, played in it, and became the very odd, unique voice of late nights, at least on the East Coast, of Pac-12 basketball. And so it was kind of fitting that the Pac-12 died and then Bill Walton did. Too.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. And to your point, too, of the whole kind of stick to sports rant. And, it's funny, like I've heard over the last month or so, maybe 3 weeks is more like it, but you've done interviews, talking about doing the Spirit broadcast. And, I've heard you and Mike Minnick and Gabby Vincent talk about broadcasting in general. And yes, a lot of times it is stick to sports, but I always say a lot of times too, in our medium, in this medium right now, is a lot of your best segments are not sports segments. Right? They're the ones, the memorable ones, and the ones that you remember or that keep people in their driveways, if they're listening in the car these days, are the ones where you are ranting and raving about something that doesn't even have to do with sports a lot of the time. And Walton was somehow the bridge to do that in games, and maybe there was something to that because in college, if you don't know a lot of the teams that are playing, you take that in a little bit more. Like that wouldn't happen in a game where LeBron and Steph are playing in, right? People are going to be like, shut up. Like, I want to hear about, you talking about LeBron and Steph instead. But when it came to college, I guess maybe he even knew he had a little bit more of a runway because he knows how many people in the country know who even the starters are in this game between these two teams, whoever it would possibly be. And he somehow bridged that gap, though. And there's a nuance to that that's so impressive. But same thing, it was like, well, if he's on the call, I'm going to fall asleep to this game because I don't know what he's going to say. And, somehow he bridged that gap, and that's a very impressive thing to do.
It's an extremely impressive thing to do. When I'm doing this show, it's different than doing a game. I've talked about this a lot. Yeah. Like this show is a place for me to just be myself And I agree with you. Most of the time, I like the segments we end up doing that don't end up always being about sports. But like, I know why we're doing this show. And if I just stopped talking about sports altogether, or the Commanders for that matter, then people would tune out at some point. Like, they still want to know. I got to see Jaden Daniels practice last week. They still want to hear what I have to say about it, right? Like,
that's right.
I know why I'm here. I'm not I'm not here to like tell you stories of my trips in '78. I get it. But when I do a game, I've talked about this a lot. Like, I've made it very important. I don't want the games to ever be about me. Never. I don't want that to happen. Like, I don't want anyone to ever accuse me of that. Like, I'm telling their story. And if I have some moments in there where a personal anecdote comes up, okay, but like, it's not going to derail anything. It's always going to be about the game. If my analysts want to go in a different direction, well, that's up to them and I'll play along with them. But that's how I just kind of feel about it. And in most cases with games, if Bill Walton was doing the Bill Walton show, it would be the same thing. But those games became the Bill Walton show and people were okay with it. And that's actually the really unusual aspect of his ability that most people don't get to do. And most people like wouldn't be allowed to be tolerated doing. Like I love Dickie V. I think Dickie V was great. He's an extreme personality. But there were a lot of people that were like, I don't know about the Dickie V game because it was so kind of became Dickie V.
Yes.
And so there was this kind of hit and miss with it. And maybe that was with Bill Walton too. Most people, I think, love Dickie V, and he really elevated the game and elevated ESPN. But there were a lot of people after a while that were like, just the personality kind of overtook the broadcast, and the broadcast became Dickie V and not necessarily Duke, North Carolina. And some people didn't really love that part of the whole thing. Walton was able to do this in the Pac-12 and go on these crazy rants about some dead show he saw in '89 and what happened afterwards with members of the Boston Celtics. And it seems to be like everybody was down for it and willing to be part of it, even if Cal was on a 10-0 run. You know what I mean?
Right,
It didn't kind of matter. And, that is something that gets afforded to very, very, very few broadcasters, and really only special ones. And you have to do it extremely authentically. You cannot do it as a character. Bill Walton was every bit what you thought he was because he showed it to you. Unapologetically, I'm a hippie. This is who I am. I like to talk about this stuff. I am well-read. Sports are not the only thing to me. Life is, living life to the fullest is what I'm all about, and I'm going to tell you about it. And I wouldn't say got away with it. He was such a good storyteller that he was able to weave that stuff in and people didn't revolt from it. And for me, I've always been, it's just not my personality to do it, but I've always been like, no one's tuning into the Commanders game to hear my stories of what I did over the weekend. So I just don't make it about me. He was able to do that. And it's not a criticism. It's just very, very, very few people can do that. Charles Barkley's another one. He can do it. Very few others can really do that. Even Stephen A. Smith, he doesn't tell stories about his personal life.
Right. Well, it's also,
never.
I will jump in to say it is completely different than a TV call than a radio call. Like it is a completely different medium. So
right, I don't have time.
Yeah, right, exactly. So
if I'm doing that, you don't know where the ball is.
That's right. Yeah. So that is a different version of it. I also think maybe this is a weird take, but maybe it's a difference between East Coast and West Coast basketball. Like the East Coast schools, you kind of know who Duke's stars are, even if you're a casual fan that year. You know who the top teams are in college basketball, and they tend to put them at that 6:30, 7:30, 8:30 window, right? And then those games were late at night, and they were just teams that a lot of times people didn't pay as much attention to because the good schools were mostly in the East Coast, on the East Coast, right? Now it's kind of shifted, right? It's way more in flux, right, with different schools and everything, and you know who some of the big players are. But I think maybe that was a part of it too, is that a lot of the East Coast crowd was going, I kind of like this because I don't really know all these players anyways. You might know the one star or whatever, but I'm happy to have story time with Bill because I'm just going to watch the game anyways, and it's just kind of background noise to what's going on the court too. It's a little bit, that's what I'm saying. It's like a different medium. It could be. So you could actually watch the game and hear it.
Had ESPN put him on a Michigan State-Kentucky game, It might not have gone very well.
Exactly. See, that's what I'm saying.
Might not have.
So I think
it might not have.
I think it's because it didn't have the blue bloods that are, some of those East Coast and you mentioned like Michigan State, like those schools as well. But he mainly was doing schools that a lot of people on the East Coast didn't care about. So maybe that's where it came through.
This is also like it's a discussion about regionality and why it still matters, and why Bill Walton doing games on the West Coast makes sense to people on the West Coast, and we find it kitschy and humorous on the East Coast because he would never do it here, but he does do it there. And there's something really likable about it, but we never have him come here and do the Maryland, North Carolina game because we're too amped up for that. Like, we can't sit here and have somebody trail off telling crazy stories in the middle of this when, we're upset about some timeout that was taken too soon. So I agree. And this is one thing about like college sports that I think bothers me most about all the changes that are happening. It isn't so much that people are getting paid or anything like that. I don't really care about that, but it's all the conferences imploding and all these teams now like amassing into these two giant behemoths. The regionality is going away from the whole thing. And it's too bad because West Coast basketball had its own vibe. East Coast basketball had its own vibe. We meet up in the middle for the NCAA tournament and you find out who's the best of the best. But the storyline and the thread lines are fun because everything is kind of regionalized to where you are. SEC football is different than Pac-12 football is different than Big Ten football. And now we're heading towards a space where it's all professionalized and there's no room for characters like Bill Walton, honestly. Maybe there will be, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's heading into a place where everything's going to be professionalized. And that part stinks too. But overall, I was just sad to hear he died. I was not surprised that I didn't know he was sick. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that wanted any sympathy from anybody. I am envious of the way that he authentically was himself in a public medium because that's extremely hard to do, but he's extremely authentic to who he was. And I just got the sense in hearing all the stories the last 48 hours that this person lived his best life. And I think you're seeing that and hearing that the way he interacted with people, the lifestyle he chose, he seemed happy. And in the end, I think that's all that matters. And he shared that happiness. And there are very few like him. And it's just sad. It was sad to see him go.
To your point there, too, about how it would translate today, the main problem today, and I kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday during my show, where, my generation, being in my mid-30s, I never really got it to when, people even your age, I know we're not too far apart, but even your age where the sometimes announcer transcends the career a little bit sometimes, where Walton was kind of both. He was such a good hoops guy, then jumped into the booth and then was that guy in the booth. That's hard to do. I don't think anyone really can make that jump again because you kind of are a little more closed off in today's day and age. We've seen it with some of these stars. Some guys are really good on social media and show their personality, but I think you and I, we talk about it too, where we're in such an open space now. A lot of guys shut down totally. You actually don't know what they're about behind the scenes. Yeah, they've got some personal interests, but a lot of guys stay closed off because they don't want the criticism that comes with being authentic these days. He had no problem doing that, and that's where I actually think it's going to be a problem with getting someone even close in the same realm as him because it's just guys do not act like that anymore. They want to be private, and that's totally their prerogative. Yeah. But he had no problem being completely open and being a deadhead and bringing guys to concerts and stuff. So yeah, it was just a different animal.
Yeah.
Much.
I'm envious of it. I'm myself here, but I'm not myself on games.
Sure.
I'm doing a job, to the best of my ability, and I think that it's a very different thing. And my personality comes out here and there on the games, but I never want the games to be about me, and partially because I don't want the backlash of it.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone accusing me of that. It's just not. It's not why I'm there. It's not what they want. They want a really good professional broadcast that emphasizes the highs and lows of their season and tells their story. But to be my authentic self in it, it's hard to do it. And in this day and age now, Bill Walton started doing this on the air before the internet. So it's different now. You have to be, if you're in this business, it doesn't take much to say something offhanded that can be either taken the wrong way or paint you in a bad light very, very quickly and go viral in 10 seconds.
Right.
And so I think people have to think about it that way. Now, Bill Walton also is a Hall of Famer. So there are, when you have the background of it, I think, there is a little bit of security of, if I say something that some people don't like, they're still not going to forget what I've done, and they'll probably let it go. I think for most other people, they're in a trickier spot with stuff like that.
For sure.
But I appreciated his authenticity for sure. And I wish more people were like that. And I know most people can't get away with it. And you have to be a hell of a storyteller to do it in the first place, because some people who just want to tell these stories, they do not hit right with people on the air, and they're taken off so quickly. So there won't be another one like him. That's for sure. There will not be another one like him. R.I.P. Bill. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram wants to show ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I made it through segment 1. I can't believe it. Holy cow. I wiped out, man. Wiped out. I don't know what is going on. Here's another thing I wanted to talk about yesterday until I started throwing up all day. Let's see. Well, the Victor Robles situation is over.
Yes. Yeah. Mercifully.
It's official. Well, not officially over, but all but.
Yes. Yeah.
Designated for assignment. So I suppose, he could come back at a later date, but that's seemingly obviously not what's happening here. What was it? Lane Thomas came back up, and that's what finally did it.
Yeah, Lane Thomas off the IL is what happened.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
He came up. Victor Robles, who's, I can't believe this, been with the organization for 11 years now. Obviously, just 6 in the big leagues, but 11 years. He came here as a very young man, touted as maybe the best prospect they had. What? Except for Harper? What? The way they touted him.
Yeah, I mean, there is a different...
They thought he was going to be a star, for sure.
There's a different level of hype when it is an international signing like him, as opposed to the number 1 overall pick like Harper. But yes, he was touted by Mike Rizzo as this blue chip type prospect. And you probably don't remember this as well as I do, but I think it was... I want to say it was the 2017 playoff run. Might have been 2016. I get those both confused pretty easily. Maybe 2016. He was brought up just to be a base running replacement. And that's when everyone was kind of like, whoa, they really do kind of value him, because that takes up a roster spot, right? You can't change your roster until a series ends, essentially. And I remember he was exactly what we, have seen on the base paths, and not in terms of decisions, but fast as hell. Really, good when you've got to replace, the Ryan Zimmerman when it's late in the game. And I remember going, all right, if this guy can do something, that'll be good for this team. And he never just quite got up to that level. And even I talked about it this morning, filling in for Tony. You and I talked about it when it was happening in 2019. Michael A. Taylor was filling in for him at center field. And I remember you and I even argued on the air of, why would you kind of change the lineup in when he comes off the IL? Yeah, because Michael A. Taylor was actually really good at the plate and defensively, and I get it. The metrics were all pointing to Robles being really good defensively. That year in 2019, he was one of the best defensive outfielders on all of baseball, so I get it. But I remember even we were kind of like Michael A.'s bat a little bit more than him, so even at the height of things with this lineup, he was never quite exactly what they wanted, and I would say never kind of lived up to the hype, and in fact got worse with age, and that's bad. That's a bad combo when you can't live up to it, and then all of a sudden you're doing boneheaded decisions on the base paths.
I was surprised to see that he's only 27.
Yes,
because he feels like he's been here forever. And you hear this with everybody. Sometimes they just need a change of scenery.
Totally.
And you know what? It's overdue and time for him. He's still very much young enough, to try to get. I'm sure there are other teams that'll be interested in giving him a shot for sure.
Yeah.
And he has had a lot of injuries the last couple of years, so he's going to have to get healthy. And this year is starting to feel a little bit like a wash. But if he ends up going somewhere else and, take some time to recalibrate, get his body back in order, I hope maybe by spring training next year, he's running around with somebody else, and has an opportunity to get on the field again, because he's too young to let it go. And the injuries that he's had, there are things like hamstrings and things like that. So that's not that, like, that's something I think that can be healed. And it's not like he's got chronic back issues or something like that. So I think, like, hopefully he'll be able to come back and play a little bit. This was Davey Martinez's quote I'm reading from a Masson piece. It was definitely emotional. There are always the toughest days when you have to lose a player, especially a guy like Vic, who I've known many, many years, and he helped us win a World Series. It was really, really tough. All I could tell him was I wish him the best and to keep going. He then used the injuries as, to excuse for how he's played the last couple of years. To your point, we talked about this earlier. God, Barry took a hammer to him, Barry Svrluga, like a few weeks ago, because he had made a couple of really bad gaffes in games, big time mistakes in games that cost them games. And he described him as you're playing like a 7-year-old, not a 27-year-old.
Right.
And, and then like the second I saw that written though, I went, okay, he's not going to be here for very long. Like yes, like it's worth the opinion piece and it's worth the time to take and go, why are you letting this happen? But the Nationals seem to not mind when people take a hatchet to people that they're about to get rid of. So the second that article or that piece came out, I went, his days are numbered.
Yep.
Well, like for real numbered here, as opposed to the last couple of years where we're like, I don't know how much longer he's going to be here.
Yeah, and there are two things off of this. One of them, I got this from TalkNats yesterday. The one kind of head scratcher is they signed Robles to a 1-year deal, and it was a $2.65 million deal, and they already had Jacob Young, and so they're kind of talk on that was, for a team that doesn't spend that much, why did you even kind of bother signing him again, especially knowing what was going on in the gaffes and all of that? That's a questionable decision that you have to ask Mike Rizzo about. And as you know, Rizzo likes to sidestep those types of things. And he's probably going to say, oh, well, he was a World Series champ, but we wanted to give him another shot, blah, blah, blah. The other part of this that I actually like, though, is that they're not holding on to him for nostalgic reasons either. Like, I think that is an important thing to acknowledge here with the Nationals, that they are trying to, we talk a lot about culture shifting out there in Ashburn. They're trying to shift their culture back to winning again. And you can't tell all of your young players and prospects that, you haven't even been called up yet, that this is okay, that you can make base running mistakes, that you can play bad defensively and be trotted out there as a starter every single day. What this does do is it shifts the organizational feel around the lineup and around the feel of the team of, just because you want a ring here and you've been around a long time, nobody's safe. And you know what? I will commend the Nats for doing that, because I think for the last couple years, we've had a little bit of that, like, they bring back a couple of guys like from, like Matt Adams, a couple years ago, or they bring on Sean Doolittle, back off of, after a couple years gone, and it's been like, oh God, like, are we really just wheeling out 2019 all over again? This does shift a little bit of a shift back to, guys, we're trying to win again, and we're not just going to keep you around for no reason. What that does do, though, is it makes everybody turn to go to, that Corbin guy has 1 year left on his deal, and you let this guy go. Corbin, yes, I know makes a lot of money, but something's got to give. He's your worst starter. You got 4 other starters that are actually better than him right now. So I will just say, they've set the tone with Robles. How long do they let it keep going with Corbin here? So that's just another thing that I'll shift my eye on as well.
Well, but Robles is making no money, so it's an easy decision to make.
That.
Like he's making $2.5 million or something like that this year. It's an easy decision to make with him, to eat it with him. This is, the Lerners burning money in a trash can doesn't seem like Cohen does. Doesn't seem like what they would like to do. And then there is this other part that's mentioned here, and it's worth mentioning. Like, the best prospects the Nationals currently have in the minor leagues are outfielders.
Yes, correct.
So he was going to be replaced anyway. That's unless he had turned around, somehow miraculously turned into the star they said he was going to be 8 years ago. He was going to be replaced anyway.
Yeah.
And then I saw like the line, they put on him. He had 236 in 8 years.
Right.
156 RBI in 8 years. In 8 years, 31 home runs in 8 years. Like, that's just the fact that he's been here that long with numbers like that is actually very telling about how loyal they were to him, honestly, because those numbers would read 3-4 years ago, they would have just pulled the plug on this, and they didn't.
Well, yeah, he got, and like I said, I think what happened is there was an organizational shift. 4 of those years were nostalgic years. 20, which wasn't a full season anyways, 21, 22, and 23. Those were purely, hey, you want a ring here. There aren't a lot of prospects. We're going to let you wheel out there every day, and hopefully you improve. But really, it was over the last 2 to 3 years where he got really bad. Like, remember last year? He was sent down to Rochester just to get his mind right. That's never good when you've been in the big leagues since 2016, 2017. That's never a good sign. And granted, he's still young, so he's got time to figure it out. But you're not in the majors that long and get sent down without some big red flags being thrown up there, essentially. So yeah, I get it that those stats aren't loud, but the last 4 years were just kind of like hey, you want a ring here? We're gonna let you play.
Yeah.
Plus, there's no one behind you. Now they have people behind you, and it's not okay to make the plays that you're making at this point.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go from the one going down to, and you flagged this 3 weeks ago for the one that might be coming up sooner rather than later. So as it turns out, Ryan Leonard's teammate at Boston College is going to sign with the Sharks.
Yep.
And the whole idea after the college season was Ryan Leonard was only a freshman. He was the first round pick of the Capitals a year ago.
Yep.
And that with the understanding was he was just going to stay and play because they're going to run it back. They've got this crazy team and they're going to run it back, and they just missed on a championship, and he is only a freshman. So he's only 18, 19 years old.
Right.
Well, now that his running mate is gone and is running off to go play for the Sharks, it seems like the window is open to try to convince him to come and leave Boston College now. What do you think? We going to get this guy sooner rather than later?
I think it's going to depend here. So to explain the story like you did, just with a little more detail, it's Will Smith, who is a center for Boston College. And the line in Boston College that just wrecks everybody is him, Ryan Leonard, and Gabe Perreault, who's a Rangers prospect. They're all prospects in the league. And I keep throwing the crazy stat out. Boston College did not lose a game by more than 1 goal this year in a non-empty net or open net scenario. Essentially, their worst losses were only 1 goal without them actually having an empty net goal happen. And Leonard wanted to run things back. Now, with Will Smith, who is a center, who is a part of the Sharks organization, signing on, the reason he did sign on is because the Sharks won the number 1 overall pick, and it gets them the stud prospect this year, who is, his name is escaping me, but they're going to be able to get the number 1 prospect, who is a winger. And they basically are going to turn to him and say, don't you want to play with the number 1 overall pick and get this thing started right away? And yes, that is the case now. He has signed on for his entry-level deal, and Ryan Leonard basically said out loud he wanted to run things back one more time. And it's worth noting, they're all sophomores. So it's not like these are guys going into years 3 or 4. These are all young guys. And instead, that one of them has now been plucked. I got to think the Caps are going to make a full push to get this guy into a Capitals uniform. Macklin Celebrini, that's the guy's name, who's going to be the first overall pick, who's a winger. The Sharks are going, guys, we want to get this thing started. Come on over right now. And so it's not hard for Will Smith to go, yeah, you know what, guys, I'm going to go ahead and move to the West Coast and play with the number 1 overall pick, get this career started. So I think the Caps have a legitimate 50-50 shot to get Leonard into Caps camp and get him, a actual big league spot on the club, because they're also going, that kind of saves them from signing a free agent, filling out the roster that's a little bit more expensive. They're actually going to be able to probably save a little bit of money if they pencil him into the lineup and he earns a spot, on a night 1 spot for this roster. All
right. So maybe. So we'll see. All right. We'll see. We'll see what happens with them. All right. Let me take a quick break. Bram watch the show. ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right. Boy, this team is so buttoned up. The Commanders, they don't announce anything. This is the second time in a week that we found out they have a joint practice with another team, but they didn't announce it. The other team announces it. So we found out that the Dolphins are having a joint practice before the second preseason game down in Miami a couple days in advance. Now we found out they're going to have one with the Jets a couple days in advance. That also will be up in New York. I doubt we'll have one with the Patriots, which is the third and final preseason game, because at that point in the summer, teams typically don't do that. But maybe, but I doubt it. That'll be the case, partially because you typically don't play anybody in the final preseason game. So you'd be practicing with the other team and not implementing any of it in the game. Right, so yeah. I doubt we'll have one with the Patriots. But I'm glad to see this. This is an interesting way to break up the summer for sure. I think these joint practices are more important than the games are in the preseason. And I'm glad that they're doing them. And I've never heard of two. So I wonder if this will become more and more of a trend, because I think we're not far away from the league is going to demand 18 regular season games, which will take us down to 2 preseason games, which will emphasize the need for more of these things throughout the summer. So this could just be the beginning of a trend that teams just kind of start doing this in the summer. And I think it's the right thing to do.
Well, I mean, also, I think you need to look at, especially with this team's trajectory this season, do you really want Jaden Daniels playing that many snaps in the preseason? I don't. So I think that what they're going to do is let's get this as controlled as possible, have him play a series or 2 in those 2 games, and then not play at all in the third one, and call it a day. You know, like, I know he's a number 2 overall pick. I know he's young, but I think more and more all these teams are going, why are we even bothering playing these guys? I also, you know, the new rules came out yesterday that might possibly, you know, shake up the offseason. But I think what's happening here is the whole entire league has been on board with kind of crappier play because of the way practices are and stuff. I think they're going, we're not going to play in these preseason games because guys are just going to end up getting hurt. And so let's have a controlled scenario in practice where these guys get a, you know, controlled scenarios.
Yes, I agree. I think it would be, I think it's, honestly, you could air these and you'd get the same.
Correct. Yep.
You'd get the same rating for them.
Yep. You could actually probably do more of these too if you don't.
You could do them in the stadiums and people would show up to them.
Correct. No, I mean, you and I have talked about it. When the then Redskins and the Ravens used to do their joint practices, they only did it for 2 years, but one was at M&T and then one was at FedEx. Those were like pretty sold. Like, I'm not saying they were sold out by any means, but they got 30 to 40,000 people to show up on a random Saturday during training camp. I think you could air these. Like, I think people would actually watch them probably a little bit more than you think as well. So I think there's definitely a reckoning coming here to the preseason because people don't like going to them. People don't stay the whole time. That third game has become utterly useless and ridiculous when it comes to the grand scheme of things. And yeah, I just think there is a reckoning that's coming here.
So the change in the schedule for the year would seemingly kind of stop what's happening now, which is these OTA practices in May post the draft, and have everybody show up for more mandatory stuff in June into July. And then the season would get extended out and the Super Bowl President's Day weekend, which would be incredible. Right. There probably would be a second bye that would probably be implemented into this, which I think makes a lot of sense to me. If you're going to keep extending out the season, 18 regular season games, you've got to give these guys a break. And in the end, too, you want the best quality by the end of the season. And it's going to be hard to get there when you're playing this many games. So you've got to give their bodies a break during the middle of the season a couple of times to try to get them around. But this is where we're heading. And, you know, for me, I mean, like last year, I think I said the whole summer is that joint practice with the Ravens. I believe that this year, too, that the Jets practice and the Dolphins practice will be more important than the games that they play in the summer.
Yep. For sure.
And, you know, just like they can get more done. The coaches are on the same page. They're willing to put their guys out there because they're practicing on the things that they want to agree to practice on. The games, I am finding more and more and more, they're just a risk. That's all they are. They're just a risk. And I get the necessity to maybe put the younger guys who are vying for a spot on the team out there and give them an opportunity. And that's fine. Like, but most teams are not putting most of their veterans out there anymore. They've quit on that idea. It's not worth the risk. So if they're willing to do it in the practices and NFL fans will watch anything, why don't we just move in this direction? And it seems like the right thing to do.
No, for sure. I mean, there's no reason to really have preseason games anymore. And I know the whole real thing is honestly because they wanted to sell those tickets, but like the money's so stupid now with the TV deals and everything else that goes on. Like, this is pocket change now. I think there was a time where, yes, selling those 2 to 4, because it was 4 preseason games. So 2 games for all the home, you know, for each team. Selling that was a big point, but like it's such pocket change now, and people don't even really kind of build those into their actual price to the season tickets anymore. I mean, yeah, there's no reason to actually have preseason games anymore at this rate.
BetOnline put out spreads for every game of the NFL season, if you can believe that. But did come also down to some overarching takes on it now. And of course, none of this matters because who knows what's going to happen. Like, I didn't know that 8 plays into his career, Aaron Rodgers would get hurt. So it'd be a little hard to know what the spread of a game in week 13 is going to be that involves him when he's not playing in it.
Sure.
But, the 49ers are favored in every game they play this year. The teams after the Niners who are favored the most are the Chiefs at 15, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Dallas, and the Jets in 14. I was surprised to see Dallas. They're favored in 14 games coming into the season.
They win 12 games all the time. I'm not surprised at that at all. They're a perfectly fine regular season team. It's what happens in postseason for them.
As for the teams that are underdogs the most, the Panthers are not favored in any game that they play.
That's right.
They're underdogs in every game except for one. They're a pick'em at home against the Saints currently.
Okay.
The teams that are underdogs the most after the Panthers, New England and Tennessee, 16 each. Underdogs in 16 of the 17 games. Denver and Vegas, 15. Minnesota, Giants, Washington, 14. We head into the season underdogs in 14 games this year. And the Giants also are underdogs in 14 games. We're each favored against each other once.
Yeah, so the respective home games. That's all.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, that sounds about right. I mean, is there something wrong there? Are you saying that because you think it's completely off? I mean, I think it's.
What
about
is our
right.
over/under on win total at this point? Is it 3?
I think it was 6 or 6.5. I want to say when I looked last. So they still think that this new regime is worth 3 wins. I mean, I think that's what we're putting it at, or at 2.5. Essentially, is what they're saying. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that's fine. I'm not surprised there. They have a defense that was a sieve, and yes, I know they've added, but okay, it remains to be seen whether they'll get better. Yeah, 6.5 is what it says. Actually, no, sorry, that was from last year. And an offense that you have no idea what it's going to look like. So yeah, I think that's about
no
right.
idea.
Yeah, you have no idea what the offense is going to be.
Absolutely no idea what it's going to look like.
Yeah, so yeah, that's about right. I mean, I'm not surprised that they're, for the most part, underdogs in all of their games or most of their games. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Let's see. What else is going on? Justin Fields says he laughed when he saw the reports that he would be returning kicks for the Steelers this year. But they must have had him do it in practice. Otherwise, why was it reported?
Right. Yeah, I don't know on that one.
I don't know either. But, maybe it's just him going, I'm not a kick returner. That's not why they brought me in here. That is going to be, to me, the most passive-aggressive, fascinating quarterback competition of the summer. Because if at any point in time it's trending towards Russ not winning the job, he's going to go on TikTok and do stupid things. Like, I'm convinced of it. Like, he will not take it lightly. So I'm dying to see how that one goes this summer.
I don't think he will because it's a 1-year deal. So I think if he wants to stay there, which I think all signs point
but he
to
can't
that.
lose the job.
Yeah, of course. No, I get that, but I don't think he's going to do that. Also, the Steelers' schedule calls for both of those quarterbacks are going to play. Like, there's no way they're going to have a starter the entire year. The fact that their second half of the season is all of their divisional games plus the Chiefs, and I think it's the Jets. I mean, that's a ridiculous schedule, and it means somebody's going to play in the second half that didn't play in the first half anyways. I think they're both going into the season knowing that they're going to play.
What the Saints did the last few years with Taysom Hill screams the Steelers should be doing with Justin Fields.
Maybe.
Like, this is the one time where I'm like, the backup quarterback never playing makes no sense to me. Why wouldn't you build a package every week and put him in?
Yeah,
because he's extremely capable.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is that you should actually do that. Taysom Hill, they should have never done that. They were shoehorning him into the offense.
They were shoehorning him in.
Yeah.
Right. That was the one where I was like, when Peyton was doing it, I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, I don't know what you guys see that think that he's a starting quarterback. But in this particular case, if Russ wins the job as it's trending, it may not end up that way. But if Russ wins the job, it trends that way. How you would have that guy on ice for 17 weeks makes no sense to me. Like, how if there ever was the second quarterback should have a package of plays or series in almost every game, it's that one.
Yeah. No, I agree on that. Yeah, for sure.
Like that should happen.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson apparently has lost a lot of weight.
Yes. Yep.
And supposedly looks really good in shape. I didn't know that he needed to. So maybe he's feeling like his speed is being diminished a little bit. He's just getting a little bit older. He's played a lot of plays, wants to keep his speed. I mean, that's his difference-making ability. So maybe that's what that's about. But
no,
I did see that one.
No, I don't think it was he's not trying to keep it. I think he's getting faster. I think that was the whole point of it. I think Diana Rossini, who tweeted it out last week, it was just that he got in better shape. And that was the point, was to be an even faster version of himself. And I also think we talk about this all the time, too. He doesn't take hits. So I think actually bulking down is not the worst thing in the world for him either. I've told you this. The way he slides, the way he steps out of bounds, he doesn't try to okey-doke you like Patrick Mahomes does. That's why Mahomes gets popped a few times on the sideline or when he goes for these runs. Jackson doesn't do that. He actually is very smart at it, and I think maybe they probably said to him, dude, you don't take hits anyways. How about you just, lose a little weight, get a little faster, and then all of a sudden you're kind of cooking with even more gas than you were before.
Yeah, I think an underrated part of the guy's game is he's very smart.
Yes.
Like when he doesn't go RG3, he doesn't take unnecessary hits. He goes he gets what he can get, and then when he sees the play's over, he gets out of harm's way.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's part of the longevity for him. It's like as if he knows I am not he can't be Josh Allen. He wouldn't last.
Right. Correct. Exactly.
He wouldn't last.
Yeah. No, and I think it's the same thing. Like Mahomes gets popped because he tries too much on those sideline runs. And that's where defenders are like, all right, dude, I have to hit you every single time. Whereas Jackson is very consistent at all of that. When he goes down, he goes down. And defenders know if they pop him, they're going to get flagged for it. So, yeah, I mean, he's absolutely figured out how to do that, and he does that very smartly. I've said it all the whole lead up to the draft. I hope Jaden Daniels watches his film on how he gets down in this league, because that's the way to really go about it.
It is the way to go. I agree. And the other one that's happening is in Cincinnati. Neither Chase nor Higgins have showed up for their stuff.
Right.
So they both want contracts at the same time.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I know which one's getting paid.
Correct. Yeah. It's Chase.
So, let's just get that over with.
Right. Well, I mean, you know this. The Bengals are a notoriously cheap organization. I mean, they've always been that way. So I'm sure it's killing them that they actually might have to pay, more than one person. The fact that they've already signed Burrow.
It's a hard problem to have when you have a good team.
Right. Correct.
Sorry that bothers you that you have a good team.
They're the ones upgrading their stadium and going, yeah, business is great. So, okay, when business is great, you need to pay your players sometimes. And
you got to pay your players.
What's funny, too, is there's this talk, this narrative has developed over the last 4 or 5 days of, the wide receiver markets are going to start heading the way of the running backs because there's too many of them. And I'm kind of going, I don't think so. Maybe the price goes down a touch. But you know what? Not unlike, Saquon signing on with the Eagles, the number one guys have no problem getting paid, and Chase is one of them. So if you're going to tell me you're not going to pay Chase, you're crazy. Higgins, I understand. Higgins is very, very good. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, Higgins is a good player. He's not a number one.
Correct.
No.
He shouldn't get number one money. But the thing that's happened though is it's dictated if you are one of those very good players, you actually get near number one money from somebody if they don't have someone, and so. Chase, though, you're paying. So I don't understand why you're even waiting for that guy. He deserves to actually get paid. So, yeah, I don't understand that.
I did see a report, too. I don't believe it. The Vikings tried to move up to get Malik Neighbors, and had they gotten Malik Neighbors, they would have traded Justin Jefferson, which I don't – I've just got to say up front, I don't believe this.
Yeah, I don't believe that either.
I don't believe it because no way.
Right.
How in the world would they explain to their fans – that not only did they got an extra first round pick, didn't get a quarterback, drafted somebody of a position they don't have a need for, only to trade away the guy who's going to be expensive because he happens to be maybe the best receiver in the NFL in his prime. How would any of that make any sense to anybody?
Well, it actually does make sense because everything they do, everything they do doesn't make sense. So
I've been saying this for a year and a half. I don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Exactly. I don't understand what they're doing. There doesn't seem to be a plan. Like, I totally get this. I am of this world where when somebody reaches, especially the quarterback reaches a certain point in pay scale, that you have to really think about it, but you have to have an answer on the other side. And they didn't. And they got rid of him anyway. And then they went and got an extra first round pick to obviously move up in the draft. And then when it didn't happen the way they wanted it to, they moved up for no reason whatsoever with a team they didn't have to trade with to like get the quarterback who was just going to fall into their lap. And then if this is true, that they would have moved up to get Malik Neighbors only then to trade Justin Jefferson. Seriously? Like, what is wrong with you people? Like,
Right.
what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who do you value?
Yeah, right. I don't understand it.
What are you trying to build here?
Right.
Explain the plan to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is full Pepe Sylvia. What are you doing?
Yes. A little
You
bit.
can't even connect those dots. Like, they don't even make any sense.
Right. It's a little ridiculous. Yeah.